Welcome to the May 1st post-draft edition of the PFF Forecast. This is going to be a treat because usually we rock right after the draft is over. Thursday night, Friday morning, we're delirious. But this time, we've saved it all up for the Sunday podcast. So we're going to talk about our bets, the bet recap with the Mayor of Antigua himself. We're going to talk a little bit about our favorite picks. We'll talk a little bit about the quarterbacks, what we make of what wasn't in terms of quarterbacks being drafted, our three favorite drafts overall, maybe a couple that we don't like, and then bets that we're making off the back end of the draft, in particular, some offensive and defensive rookie of the year. Let's rock. Alrighty. I'm fresh off a red eye last night on my way back. Guess who was on my flight with me?
Oh, God. So back here, Cincinnati legend, of course.
Nope. Hint. This is a good hint for you. It was surprising in that they were a really famous person, a football player who does not live in Cincinnati.
Does not have a Cincinnati connection?
No, not even a Cincinnati connection. Was taking a red eye back to Cincinnati, but that was not their final destination. So it's kind of weird.
Oh, okay. But it's got to be a city that's kind of off the beaten path. If you're connecting through Cincy.
It was weird. It was strange because the city they live in is a hub for Delta Airlines. That's a good hint for you.
Which is Minneapolis? No. New York?
No. Closer.
Philadelphia.
First,
Pittsburgh.
The sound of the first.
No.
Our previous team.
Falcons. Okay.
Okay. Falcons legend. Who was the Falcons legend that was on my flight?
On the team or not on the team?
No longer on the team.
Julio Jones.
Nope.
Roddy White.
Bigger legend.
Matt Ryan.
Bigger legend. Who's the biggest Falcons legend in the past 20 years?
Deion Sanders.
Okay. Maybe not the biggest one.
Michael Vick.
Michael Vick.
Wow.
Michael Vick.
Fresh off of running like a 4.7 or something.
And throwing the ball out of the end zone. So I'm walking through the Vegas airport, and Michael Vick is just literally right next to me. And the craziest thing about Michael Vick is he's not that big of a guy. He's just really not. I mean, he's like 6 foot tall, maybe 6'1", and tons of people were coming up to him. Everyone recognized him, and everyone on the plane wanted to take a picture of him. And the craziest thing is he was just taking a red eye. He was first class, obviously, but just taking a red eye back to Cincinnati, and he had to connect to Atlanta. So we get off the plane. It's 5 in the morning. Everyone's delirious, and he just has to go take a seat. I think he was there with his mom. Just has to go take a seat, kind of waiting at the gate for when their Atlanta flight comes. And I was like, man, he's kind of a regular dude. Like, I'm sure he could figure out a way to get, a better flight here or whatever. But, so me and Michael Vick traveled back. I guess my takeaway was maybe he just didn't win as many bets as he needed to on the draft.
Well, look, we were all – we had a good –
He didn't have Quay Walker.
Yeah, we had a good week, but it could have been so much better, right?
There were a couple big misses, right?
So let's go over a couple of the wins here that we had. We had – everything Quay Walker. Quay Walker going first linebacker was so nice. Was
massive.
It was 25-1. We got it at 20-1, 15-1, 10-1. It closed at plus 175. I actually am sorry. One of my best friends asked me what was my favorite bet, and I said Quay Walker second linebacker, which was like plus 175 for a second. And then he took it off the board.
Right.
And so that one lost actually. Evan Neal over 3.5 was good. Kyle Hamilton over 6.5 was good. Those were like long gone by the time the draft started. The Stingley steam, so any Stingley top 5, exact at 3, but even like under 12.5 early in the process was great. The interesting one was Friday. You don't know any of this, but so I wake up Friday. We get done with the draft at like midnight, right? I stay here hanging out. We're hanging out.
You slept here, didn't you?
I didn't actually.
Oh.
So because we didn't.
Weakness.
We didn't go anywhere. So we were all just hanging out, catching up or whatever. I go home. I get back probably at 2. Fall asleep at like 2:15. I wake up at 7:30, which I'm just like, I didn't set an alarm or anything. I had a meeting at 10, and I get a text from somebody who's like, Logan Hall's the pick at 33. And so I look at FanDuel, it's plus 275. His over-under is like 38.5. So none of the offshores are offering it. So I get into my car, drive over. You'll actually appreciate it. I drive over. By the time I get there, I get my money out of so I had like $1,700 or whatever in tickets to get out. Plus I had all the apps. I get down on under 35.5 Logan Hall, and it ended up being plus 125 by the time I got into Indiana for him to be the 33rd pick. All that's great and everything. But I got a meeting with my team. I run R&D here. So then I take the meeting from the coffee shop in the casino, which is having at the time.
No way.
Because
the best. How good was this coffee, by the way?
The pandemic, by the way. So since the pandemic, they have not opened up the buffet at the casino.
Okay.
And so they had like this makeshift like breakfast buffet for people staying in the hotel attached to the casino, just sitting right there. So I'm having this meeting with Timo, Ben, all those guys, and I'm like munching on some bacon or something while I'm like collecting. And I get back, and some of these offshores still had like Logan Hall at like minus 200 to be pick 33. I laid the price. It closed at minus 600. That was a big win. John Mechie under 56.5. James Cook under 69.5. Those were all good ones. The one that killed me though,
I got a little Breece Hall.
Okay, that was nice. That was exactly.
It was a nice piece. That was one of the only ones that I was able to get in. So what really sucks is that this is so ironic. It's impossible to bet on things in Vegas. You have to go to a sports book. You have to, sign 55 different sheets. It's a complete disaster. So I land there. I have meetings all day. It's impossible to actually get to a sports book, or I would have had so many more bets down. Luckily, I got a couple Quay Walker offshore. And what was interesting was I didn't feel like people out there, obviously some of the, people that are actually working on these numbers and trading things, but people that worked, in and around the sports betting industry were not aware about the Quay Walker landslide.
It was, and I think the most the biggest thing here is oftentimes these sportsbooks lose money on the draft, right? Like they just absolutely get crushed. Some of I can't remember if it was Superbook or one of like Win or something in Vegas didn't even like post their lines. But the Quay Walker thing happened. We found out about the information on Thursday. Friday morning is when I made the first bet because it dropped to 175. It saved 175 top 32 all weekend. And then Monday, Monday I was talking to Drew Dinsick, our friend with the Deep Dive Pod, and he said, well, Monday most of the Quay Walker money came in because that's when all the markets opened up and you could have liquidity. Like Circa allowed you to have a limit size bet of $1,000 on any over/under. Now they didn't have Quay Walker on their list, but so yeah, if you go to like an offshore sports book. I got Quay Walker 38.5, they only let you bet $200 on it, some of these. So that is sort of, I think, where a lot of the, it didn't move until, sharp bettors started putting actual money on it. But then by the time, it was Wednesday, it was minus 600, to go in the top 32. And I think that ultimately, is where it stood.
What was obviously the Desmond Ridder 40-1 didn't hit. Now it was closer than it was close, right? I mean, it was second quarterback taken. We had no quarterbacks taken for an eternity, and everyone was talking about it. My bet that I was so sure was going to hit, and we talked about this on the Sunday podcast last week, and on the Wednesday podcast right before the draft. I don't know why, but I was so certain that Drake London was going to slide. And of course, our Falcons go take him. So you can basically kiss Drake London's future goodbye because
that's so bad.
He's going to have Marcus Mariota throwing him bounce passes. A better chance playing for the Hawks. Drake London might be a better player if he goes and plays for the Hawks.
The interesting thing is I had like limit size bets on over for Willis and over for Pickett, and they both hit. The thing that I'm really pissed off at myself about was day 2 not going over on the quarterbacks. Like I thought, like I had one really small bet on Seahawks with Willis. I know our friend Kendall Valenzuela was really pissed off that they went with Kenneth Walker instead. But the fact is like Kevin Cole tweeted out, there's only been like it's been like an average of like 1.1 quarterbacks taken in the second round for like the last like decade. And like we just overlooked that because
last year.
And so, but if you went over on every single quarterback, you would have hit every single bet. So that was interesting. Another one we lost. I lost the one that cost me about like $1,200, which was Malik Willis, first quarterback taken. When they went with Pickett on the show, my heart sank because we had yet to see the Quay Walker one go.
Right.
And there was a few other ones. We talked about Linderbaum. Now we didn't know the Ravens would trade and get back into round 1. But Linderbaum, was falling, but he didn't fall out of round 1. Under 7.5 offensive linemen. I think we have Cole Strange and the New England Patriots to thank for that one.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, what was that? That was insane.
Yeah. And wide receiver, look, this is why it's always good to get the best of the number. The thing opened at 5.5. People were betting it over. And then you get Traylon Burks taken at 18 with wide receiver 6. And the market closes at 6.5. You're feeling pretty good about one more wide receiver. No wide receivers the rest of the draft. If you bet over 6.5, you got taken there. Quarterback as well. Some of those sports books, I remember it was either Caesars or DraftKings were offering you an odds boost for over 3.5 quarterbacks. And that thing didn't even get over 1.5 quarterbacks, which is very interesting. A plus price pop if you took under 2.5 quarterbacks because 3 was sort of the favorite. Sort of interesting there.
The Jameson Williams 5-1 to be first receiver taken was a bummer.
Yes.
And
he ended up being wide receiver 4.
I'm surprised. Aren't you? Were you surprised by that?
That
was one of the bigger surprises for me.
I was on Moneyball. And I said this. I said like these drafts are a look into the team's souls. And I got a little bit of a rebuttal, like, "Oh, are you really able to ascertain that much?" With the Saints, you are. The Saints were linked to Chris Olave the whole time. They were linked to Trevor Penning the entire time, and they had to go up and trade up to get Olave ahead of Jameson. They felt that they had to, right? Which was very interesting. The Vikings immediately go and turn pick 12 into the Lions, and the Lions take Jameson Williams. But that's like the Saints felt that they had to do that, right? Like that's like sort of who they are fundamentally as a team. It is a team that believes they have to go up and get their guys. They end up getting Olave, they end up getting Penning, but they probably paid too much for them, right? And then I thought an interesting one, a guy that I really like, but maybe this is a little bit of an overdraft. The Commanders taking Jahan Dotson at 16. Yeah, that was probably 13.5.
Yeah, well, I know
it
was 13 picks before you wanted him to go.
Yeah.
We're gonna get the mics fixed, so please sit tight. It's gonna be 60 seconds. We're gonna put a little music over the top of this. So go check out Memphis as they try and hold Golden State off here. But we'll be back in just like 1 minuto. So. You want to know how booming Eric's voice is? His mic was not plugged in, and you were hearing him through a mic that was below the desk. And yeah, that was why it sounded weird. So apologies. Look, it's been a long week. Ethan and the video team, so Ethan, our producer in the back right now, they have been absolutely grinding. I don't know how many straight hours they've been in this wonderful office, but it is many. So we'll give him a little break here. By the way, if you are looking to get more information about the NFL draft and perhaps get yourself ready for next season with all the great fantasy tools and betting tools that we have, go to pff.com right now. Use promo code Forecast, FORECAST, and that will give you 25% off on any PFF subscription. So go make it happen. Get yourself set up for the next calendar year. It'll give you all the draft stuff, obviously, for next year as well. Also, Eric is such a big degenerate that he's currently watching the USFL on his phone.
It's there. Jeff Fisher.
Really incredible. What bet do you have right now in the USFL?
I have a little under 39.5, a little under 38, and two bets that will not win. I have the Pittsburgh Maulers like plus 2.5 and plus 125. So, I mean, the Maulers are down 60-0. Kirby Wilson, the former running backs coach for the Minnesota Vikings, I have to face facts. The USFL is too big for him.
Yes. Maybe we find like a rec league.
By the way, speaking of degeneracy, you know it starts on Friday.
What starts on Friday? The WNBA? See, I knew this. Now, okay, so my NBA bets, I have an apology to make to our syndicate, okay? Because I should have called this out. The Bucks against the Celtics. The Nets stink. The Nets are a nightmare, okay? And we should not have been bamboozled by the Celtics destroying the Nets. And we should have known that there was no one that was going to be able to guard Giannis, and that if they were going to try and guard Giannis, he was going to kick it out to three-point shooters. I feel like an idiot for not identifying it. And you know why I couldn't bet the Bucks today? It's because I, in the back of my head, heard you going, oh, but Chris Middleton's out.
Yeah.
And it turns out it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think it'll matter eventually. But yeah, like the hard part for me is the Nets have to be wretched in order for the Celtics to put on the defensive clinic that they put on for 4 games.
But Kyrie and Kevin Durant were playing 42 minutes a game for the last, trying to squeak them in.
Right.
And didn't have a chance. I also could not bring myself to bet on Memphis, even though I thought Memphis at home as an underdog was a good move. I kind of just need to see the series. I feel like a donkey, though, because that was the right play. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about the quarterbacks here. So we did a mock draft, and
I don't think I've ever got one more wrong.
Now, in fairness, I think the Derek Stingley pick has been vindicated.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So I took Malik Willis at 2. I was between him and Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, both of them would have been an overdraft, as Aiden Hutchinson ended up going number 2. But Malik Willis goes hours and hours and hours, a day later. To the Tennessee Titans, not even the first or second quarterback taken. And you see these teams, the Falcons ended up taking Desmond Ridder. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to wait all the way until pick 20 and then took Kenny Pickett. The Washington Commanders waited so long on Sam Howell that he may have actually get another year of eligibility.
Sam Howell, by the way, went in the first round of Chris's draft. When we did his show on Wednesday. Sam Howell, if you didn't adjust for big board rank, was the best quarterback on our board, and he went 5th round.
What do you make of this? Like what? Because I was trying to think about it this way. Let me ask you this question: get in the head of the NFL GM. Like, why were they taken so late?
I think it's 2 reasons. One reason is it's like a self-fulfilling thing. If you're looking and you see the Vikings passed on him, right? Then you see the Lions passed on him. Yep. Then you see the Steelers passed on him. Then you see the Titans passed on him. And then you're like, well, is there something wrong with him? That I think these teams, especially ones without great processes, don't trust their processes a little bit. Like they let the league influence sort of what they're doing too much. And I think the second one, and I think we've been talking about this for years. Like I've bemoaned the losses of the Tony Romos and the Jake Delomes and the Kurt Warners and the Aaron Brookses and the Matt Hasselbecks. The thing is, like the league, there's no room in the league for developmental quarterbacks, right? There isn't. Like I sort of think about. And it's really funny because like you get these tweets from some people who are like, oh, these are people you got to treat. And it's like 20 years ago, the league used to shuffle back and forth between quarterbacks all the time, right? But now we have free agency. Now we have how well they're paid and all this kind of stuff. they're management now, right? Quarterbacks are management.
Right.
And there isn't an allowance for a multiple quarterback system. Let's think about like the sore thumb that is like sort of Jordan Love, like what the Packers are going to do with him, what that draft pick looks like. And I think that was somewhat of a forward-thinking draft pick. Maybe not necessarily trading up for him or the quarterback that they traded up for, but he's like the quarterback of the future. And ultimately, like, quarterbacks play longer now. That's a big deal.
Yep.
And the quarterback rookie contract after pick 10. So the league has done this interesting thing where most in the top 10, rookies are paid a lot less than they were adjusted for inflation than they were back in the pre-CBA days. But after that, like I always say, Aaron Rodgers, when he was picked 24th by Green Bay, his contract was 5 years, $7 million. So you got 5 years of team control for $1.4 million a year. And so then you had like all these levers. Jordan Love's contract is nowhere close, is higher than that raw, but also the 5th-year option is expensive, right? And you have to decide whether or not you're exercising it by year 3. So after pick 10 or so, like, you actually, I mean, the rookie quarterback is maybe not a good gamble, especially in a league where I think about, like, remember when Jay Cutler was the quarterback of the Broncos and Josh McDaniel like flirted a little bit with trading for Matt Castle?
Yep.
And Cutler's like, I'm out. And they don't even get Matt Castle, by the way. But he's like, I'm out. You're even talking to another player. Same with Matt Ryan, right? The Falcons even think about Deshaun Watson. He's already in Indianapolis.
Yep.
So I don't think like there is a spot for like, we like you a lot, but we're gonna put this guy in place. And it sort of speaks to how many actual quarterback positions are open in the NFL and the opportunity cost, which right now is like a choice of Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I think all those things influence, but for the most part, there is no such thing as a developmental quarterback in the NFL anymore. The guy's either drafted to be your franchise guy or he's an afterthought like Sam Howell.
The thing that I could not get over was how this group of quarterbacks were drafted so far behind the second tier of quarterbacks from last year.
Yeah.
That was the thing that I couldn't figure out. And, I think there are a couple of factors. The first is that if you're going to make an investment at quarterback early-ish this year, it makes it harder for you to get out from them if they play decently next year. And I think the simple fact is that NFL GMs don't want to have to make those tough decisions.
Yeah. And they don't think years into the future. The majority, we'll talk about these teams that we really liked this week. But the teams that drafted really well this week, the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, Packers, what do they all have in common? They have security. They have general managers who are good and are going to be there for a while. Every other GM, I mean, Joe Douglas is like trading up for Jermaine Johnson and then Breece Hall because if they don't perform this year, they're screwed.
Oh, we're going to talk about the Jets.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts on the Jets.
So I would also say that like a developmental quarterback requires a plan that lasts longer than like 2 years, whereas trading for Russell Wilson, trading for Matt Ryan, and like Ballard's fine, but like, those kind of Marcus Mariota, those guys, those are like get on the green this year type of picks.
Yes. Now, what I do think is interesting is that we should, like, I look at what the Commanders did, and this is by luck, I think, to a certain degree, but the Sam Howell pick for the Commanders, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but that's the best pick in this draft.
The same way that Jalen Hurts was the best pick of the 2020 draft, other than Burrow and Herbert. But
yeah. But, I mean, but there's no quarterback here at the top of this draft that's going to be, bet. So, and then I think the second one is Malik Willis there for the Titans. And it's interesting because I want to talk about the Titans draft and the Commanders draft because those picks, those matter more. Quarterback picks matter more. And two takeaways from this draft. One was there are some teams that don't realize it, but that could have made franchise-altering picks, in the deep rounds of these quarterbacks, which is ridiculous. But secondarily, that there were no quarterbacks worth trading up for, and yet, Eric, teams traded up time and time again.
There were, 18? No, how many trades was it? No, there were 18 picks that changed hands at some point, and then there were like 10 trades in the first round, something like that.
All these teams trading up, and trading up in a weak draft class for a non-quarterback. Not I could not do it. I absolutely could not.
And there was also, I mean, like, do we look like? What do you think? Here's a good question. I think of where your mind's at. What did you think of the AJ Brown trade? Because I think everybody believes Baltimore absolutely took Arizona to the behind the woodshed for the Marquise Brown
Hollywood Brown trade.
That one was absolutely egregious. But
that was
it was.
Oh my God! So let's save that for the best and worst drafts because I want to destroy it.
But what do you think about pick 18 for AJ Brown and a contract that is basically, after you add in the rookie year deal, $21 million a year?
I will address that in my best and worst drafts because I've been waiting to talk about it.
Here's the one thing I want to talk about after the quarterback discussion here, which is Jermaine Johnson, because we didn't like him very much. I did not have a good eval on him. I mean, I don't watch a ton of film, but I have I do. All of our guys watch film and give us data, and then we crunch the numbers and do the projections and stuff. Jermaine Johnson he's a grandfather. Senior Bowl star, which I think like some of the sharp people I talk to in the league are like, the Senior Bowl is overrated. The Senior Bowl is mostly noise and
Also lives in a senior living facility.
Yeah. Well, and he only had the one good year. He only had the one good year as a 22-year-old, et cetera, et cetera. And yet everybody's saying that it was a steal for the Jets to go back into the 20s and get him. A, you're trading up, so you're paying something for that. B, all the steam about Jermaine Johnson was from two teams. It was the Jets at 4, the Jets at 10, and the Seahawks at 9.
Yep.
There's a universe, and there's the heterogeneity of draft boards, which I think we saw explicitly with the Patriots, for example, this week. Jermaine Johnson could have just been, draft position 9.5 in the betting markets solely because of the Jets and Seahawks' opinion of him. If the other 30 teams don't believe in him, then this isn't a steal. And there really isn't anything. If Kevin Cole said this well on his podcast, The Unexpected Points, like there's no such thing as a steal, right? Because ultimately the market chooses the guy's position. There's a thing as a reach. Like it takes one team to make a bad eval. If all 31 teams pass on a guy, the chances of that being a collectively bad eval is pretty low, right?
Yes, and I can't believe this is going to rub some people the wrong way. The Jets had a below average draft. Let me ask you this. Do you give someone, how much credit do you give someone if they are handed $1 million and then invest the $1 million in
make him president,
Apple and Amazon?
Sorry. Well, yeah, I think that's why everything in this world has to be adjusted for expectation. Now, I think
yes, they took, I think, two players that were valued appropriately. Mm-hmm. Now, would I have taken Jameson Williams over Garrett Wilson? Sure. Could you made an argument for
Sauce
Kayvon
Gardner was a good pick, but you
could have made an argument for Thibodeau, but you're not going to argue with those two picks. The problem is you're also not going to give them a bunch of credit for making just because they didn't pick Cleveland Farrell at 4 doesn't mean you get a trophy. But when you trade back in for a player like a Jermaine Johnson,
right,
and where there's, to your point, a lot of things around him analytically that don't make a ton of sense. But then you're the Jets. You suck. You are terrible. You used a premium pick on a running back, and I don't want to be this guy.
When you used a high pick on a running back last year.
I don't want to be this guy. But are you fucking kidding me? That was the problem with your team? Your team sucks ass.
Yeah.
Like, take Malik Willis. Take another quarterback, because guess what? Zach Wilson was garbage last year. Like, you took Breece Hall in the top of the second round as one of the worst teams. You need everything. You literally need every position. Like the players that were still available to them. Ibikite was still there. Pitre was still there. Boye Mafe was still there. Andrew Booth was still there.
Tyler Gordon.
Mechie was still there. Ojabo was still there. Like, there were so many players that could actually provide you value. Pickens was still there.
Yeah.
Take another wide receiver. You took a running, arguably the strongest part of your team is the running backs, which is a joke in part because your team sucks so badly, but also your running backs aren't bad. Like, I can't believe I'm getting so pissed off. But
It's interesting because,
I just believe that the Jets draft, when you adjust for the draft capital they had, was a below average draft.
Yeah, I think when you look at Benjamin Robinson does this great thing called draft capital over expected using the grinding the mocks data. And like ultimately the Jets were actually a little bit above average, like a little bit above zero in that. But the issue is like, I don't know if this does a whole thing where they use the trades that were required to go up and get the players, because the two trades that were required to go and get Jermaine Johnson and Brees, and Jermaine Johnson's fine. I mean, he's a defensive end. They need edge players on that team. They're also going to have, Carl Lawson back on the squad this year after an AC or a broken leg ACL type of thing last year. So that works. It's fine, right? But the Brees Hall thing, but like they didn't do that well. Like, to me, you can hack this system. And again, Benjamin, we're friends. Like, come at me if I'm not doing this properly. But essentially, you can hack the draft pick adjusted over expected thing by saying, Jermaine Johnson's the 9th guy on our board. We're going to trade up to 22 to pick him, and we're going to give up a ton of stuff. And it's like, that's how they reason those things out, right? Mm-hmm. But in reality, like, the market is the market.
In reality, he's not the 9th most valuable player.
Right. And
like, your opinion of him being the 9th most valuable player when the entire rest of the league has decided you're on crack cocaine, ain't it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
By the way, the team that got the most pick-adjusted draft capital over expected per his model was Carolina, who took Matt Corral, late on, which is, I think, a pretty good pick. Green Bay 2nd, Arizona 3rd. Interestingly, and then the Kansas City Chiefs, Seahawks, Ravens.
Carolina, by the way, not having the stones to take a quarterback early, like.
But let's push this back a little bit. I'm gonna push back a little bit. So given, and again, this is inherently circular, but given the whole league's appetite for the QB position this year, though.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
In hindsight,
look, they didn't take one at 6. And I think that,
you say not having the stones to take one because they didn't have a round 2 or 3 pick. That's the issue. Yeah. So it was either going to be at 6 or when they end up taking them. Which I mean,
look, if you feel, I guess the reason I said that is not to say I don't like the Matt Corral pick, because I do, but they are refusing, I think, to accept that there's a chance Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, any of those guys, like, if those guys are a average to above average quarterback, they should have taken him at pick 6, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is that you go, 6 is too high to take one of those guys, but you don't get, to your point, you don't get exact change. Now, could they have traded down? That's interesting. And the reason I think it's interesting is because everyone was trying to trade up. There were right.
Yeah. So
there were so many trade ups. So I'm curious if that was possible. But the other thing there is you're almost the same thing I think Washington did with Carson Wentz. It's like, we want Sam Darnold to have a chance to own the locker room. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
You're high. But the other part, so it was an underdog that there was going to be a trade in the first 10 picks, and there were none.
Right.
So the first trade was at 11 with the Commanders giving the Saints Chris Olave's pick, and
people in the chat are pissed at me, by the way.
Why?
The Jets took good players.
They did. I mean, look, I'll say this. I had a tweet where I took Thibodeau and Walker and Sauce Gardner first 2 picks, and I said, look, this is Thibodeau and I can't remember. There were 2 good picks. I got A+, of course. And I said, look, the most famous of famous last words, but it's going to be really hard for the Jets to fuck up this draft. And like, I don't think they fucked it up. I just don't think that they had like the most. And they're gonna. But, like, that's the point. You're bad. Like, you should get good players every draft. That's what it's designed for. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think the team that I think the Giants did just as good as they did.
Oh, yeah.
Evan Neal.
I love the Giants draft. Yeah. Evan Neal and Thibodeau. Yeah, but, like, just because you took players that everyone in the world thought you should take at those positions, that's good.
And I guess, like, we get this from the Jaguars, right? Where the Jaguars take 2 players who are, like, not like two players that might not help them this year.
Well, I'll say this about the Panthers. At least they took a quarterback. Like the Giants, I think they should have taken a quarterback. Given where they took some of those players, like Wan'Dale Robinson was a big reach there. Take a developmental quarterback. You're really worried that taking a developmental quarterback, like to me, the Giants were in a position to do what the Eagles did a couple of years ago with Wentz.
Yeah, it's even better one because they're not
paying him already. Yeah. But they pussied out. Sorry, I said I wouldn't swear, and I'm already in there.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Let's get to our favorite picks. Let's kind of alternate here.
Okay.
We'll do this, and then we're going to do our favorite drafts overall, and then some bets that we're going to make.
I'm going to be okay. So obviously, the Seahawks find a way every year, and this year they didn't. I thought Charles Cross at 9 was the best value of the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic tackle. Great pass protector. Seahawks aren't going to be good this year anyway, right?
Right.
And he fell to them. They took him. I thought he was a great pick. When they didn't go Jermaine Johnson, they didn't go Trevor Penning. Like they had a lot of opportunities to be really stupid, and they didn't. They took a good player.
Okay, I am torn here because some of the picks that I really like are the result of bad process. So I'm going to mention one that I really like that is the result of bad process, and that is the Lions trading up with Minnesota. Loved what Minnesota did moving back.
Yeah.
Loved the Jameson Williams pick. Now, do not like the process at all. Do not like trading up. Assuming you were at 12 and you take Jameson Williams there, who is wide receiver 1, like I was thinking about this. If you were at pick 12 and you wanted a receiver like Jameson Williams, but you managed to not trade up, like that would have been really great process because you're sitting there and letting the other teams make those decisions ahead of you. And so I really liked that pick. And I'm actually excited. We're going to talk about Offensive Rookie of the Year here. I'm excited about Detroit. I'm excited about what Jameson Williams could do in that offense. Like when he's protected, Jared Goff throws a good deep ball. So I am bullish there. But let me go to a player who was picked in a position that he was actually slotted that I really, really liked. And this is not a homer one, by the way. This is, we talked about this guy, Drake Jackson, being a first rounder. And the Niners being able to get Drake Jackson.
Great Ben.
At 61. It was short-lived that the Niners did good things in this draft, but we're going to call a spade a spade. I really liked this pick because it's not a need for them.
Yeah.
But you strengthen a strength with the best player that's available. That defensive line is going to be terrifying. So loved the Drake Jackson pick.
Lighting a day 2 pick on fire is just the price you pay for having Kyle Shanahan's brilliant brain as your head coach.
Yeah, you got to. It's like playing golf. If you're +6 handicap, you got to give a few strokes up to the competition.
Okay,
hit me with another one.
Here's another one I liked. I liked Kyle Hamilton at 14 to Baltimore. I know the positional value is an issue. Mm-hmm. I also know that, they could have. I think Jordan Davis was in play here. Like all the markets had sort of solidified on him being, but then the Eagles moved up for Jordan Davis, so that sort of sniped them. They get Hamilton. Chuck Clark's still on that team. They just signed Marcus Williams. I think that they're going to be more of a 2-high team. They took Travis Jones later in the draft, which is one that I sort of called the next day, as they want to be sort of more of a, one of those teams that does the sort of 2-high stuff with the fatty up front, in Michael Pierce and him. I like that one a lot. I know the positional value is an issue, but you're talking about the player that was either top 5 on a lot of people's adjusted boards. They did the same thing, by the way, with Linderbaum, where it was just such a big discrepancy that they took him. Linderbaum ended up, I don't think is a great scheme fit for them, but they're also not a team that's going to shoehorn a player into a bad scheme. They're a smart team. They'll use him smartly, but Hamilton's great. They can go 3 safeties. It sort of covers up a little bit of the issue they have with Queen as well, because they can play Chuck Clark in the box as the 3rd safety now. So I like that pick a lot.
No, I agree with you. And by the way, Kyle Hamilton is one of the many players in this draft who had a girlfriend that was a key component of the celebration. I don't know if you saw this, but they have a secret handshake. It was actually pretty well executed.
Okay.
And so, of course, I had to go do some research on does she seem like she's, a cool girl, and what's their relationship like? Does this worry me? I normally am like kind of anti. I've had a girlfriend through college, and like, you know, we're coming into the league together. I feel good about this one. I don't know why. I don't know why. I feel good about it. So there are some others that I don't feel so good about. I'm not going to mention them here because I'm just going to get absolutely torched into oblivion.
Go for it.
But there are some that let's just put it this way. You can go watch the first round and you can probably guess which ones I'm not super high on. Next one that I would like to call out. And this one is, again, a bit of a challenge because this team and I have a very, shall we say, tumultuous past. But I really like the George Pickens pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 52. And again, another situation where you are strengthening a quote-unquote strength here. I think a lot of people are like, oh, you have Chase Claypool, you have, you know, Deontay Johnson. Like, you know, what do you need another big receiver for? You need more receivers. And especially after you invest in Kenny Pickett at 20, which I think you could make a case for being one of my favorite picks too, because just agnostic of like, let's say we don't know anything about any of the quarterbacks. You waited until 20, you got the first quarterback, and you got the choice to take whichever one you wanted. But George Pickens, I think there are a lot of reasons off the field why you might be nervous, but at pick 52, you get a player who's on the field production, I think has a really good chance of being a top a first round pick. And you think about some of the receivers that kind of had to be taken way earlier. I think about the Packers going after Christian Watson, like a ton of on the field question marks. He's an amazing athlete. George Pickens, a pretty good athlete as well, but has produced at the highest level in college. Really like that pick.
Yeah, and it's also just keeping other teams from being able to take him. That's a big one as well. I know Kansas City liked him a lot. Not enough to trade. They did trade back.
Right.
But like this pick was after the Tyquan Thornton pick, right? This pick was after. I mean,
that
like
was
this,
an interesting pick.
This is a good, like, I mean, yeah, this is what you need to do. I'm going to leapfrog a couple. This is one, again, we get to look at the souls of the teams that are drafting. Mm-hmm. And this is just so Buffalo Bills. So much that I like the James Cook pick, by the way, just not because I won money on it, but just because like they clearly looked at, you know, when we looked at the perfectly blocked run stuff, like Josh Allen makes more perfectly blocked runs. James Cook, like a 9 yard per carry guy on perfectly blocked runs in college. So he's like different than the Zach Mosses and the Devin Singletaries. They're tackle breakers, which is an analytical way to look at running back too. But in their certain instance, they need a guy who can capitalize on the holes that they're producing on the offensive line because of Josh Allen. So I like that a lot, but this is the one that I again, this is just so Buffalo. Khalil Shakir, the wide receiver from Boise at 148. I know he has the 29-inch arms, and I know that caused him some issues at Boise State.
It's not very long.
No. But Buffalo every single year just does this. Marquez Stevenson last year. Then they had Gabriel Davis the year before, who scored 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs in the AFC division.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't remember who that was.
Because you know how many catches did Diggs have in that game? 2?
Was it 2? I was going to say 2. I mean,
in the playoffs,
Gabriel Davis cooked the Chiefs.
In the playoffs, when you're facing teams, what kind of teams do you face in the playoffs? You face good teams and you face healthy teams, right? Mm-hmm. You face lucky teams and good teams. Part of that luck is having enough secondary players to devote to your best wide receiver. Why have the Packers been a 13-win team 3 consecutive years and have struggled on offense in the playoffs? Because their offense funneled through one player, right? And so when they played a team like Tampa, when they played a team like the Niners, it's not like playing the Lions twice a year. It's not like playing the Bears twice a year. You're playing the best of the best. The Buffalo Bills have winning 13 games in this league down pat. What they don't have is winning in the playoffs down pat, right? Mm-hmm. Or not. They've won playoff games. They've won 3 out of the last 5.
But getting to the Super Bowl.
But getting to the Super Bowl. And that's the goal for them. Them continuing to build so they have the next man up at wide receiver when inevitably either, you know, Diggs gets hurt or Emmanuel Sanders is ineffective. John Brown's ineffective. They just got the next guy up. That was a great pick for Buffalo.
Agree with you. Okay, I have one more that I want to do, and this is actually interesting because the Colts with Bernard Ryman hypothesis at 77. I liked that a lot. Now, I liked it a lot, but it was very interesting because the other pick that I really liked was Tennessee. Was it 9 picks later at 86 with Malik Willis?
Yeah, I had them on my.
And if you're the Colts, Okay, the Ryman pick, we had him 4th overall at the position, 18th overall on our board. Love that. Strengthening a strength, again, with a valuable position. I'm not going to hate on that. And you've got Ryan now. You're trying to win this year. But it's interesting. We may look back on this and go, the Colts should have just said, look, Malik Willis has dropped to us, or Sam Howell has dropped to us. Like, we're taking a shot here. And I think it'll be very interesting to look at this in 3 years, because the Malik Willis to Tennessee, say all the things you want about A.J. Brown leaving and all that stuff, that could obviously change their the direction of their franchise.
Yeah, and it's late enough in the draft where it's like sort of non-threatening to Ryan Tannehill, right? Like look, Kellen Mond went earlier than freaking Malik Willis did last year, and it's like,
if you're taking a quarterback outside of the first round and it threatens your quarterback, then you need to get rid of that quarterback. You need to get rid of him. Okay, let's do this kind of rapid fire here. Your favorite drafts by team.
Okay, I mean, the first one is just the Ravens, right? Like, the Ravens just are the meme where they stand there and all the other players fall off the cliff, right? They, Hamilton, Linderbaum, not great positional values. But then you go later in the Charlie Kohler and Isaiah Likely, 2 tight ends, when, they don't have great wide receiver play. So that what do? They do what Belichick did in the mid, Gronkowski and Hernandez. They do that kind of thing. They just pick up value everywhere. So I really like that one.
I like that one as well. I'm going to go with, and this one is tough for me because I don't like the trade up for Jordan Davis. But I love what the Eagles are doing with a quarterback in Jalen Hurts. This is the A.J. Brown move. They're paying him a little over $20 million a year when you adjust for that rookie deal. And this was, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And you do this move, you make this move when you have a guy like Jalen Hurts there, who, by the way, I think people are shitting all over Jalen Hurts. 85 PFF grade. I think for most of the year last year, it fell down a little bit at the end of the year, but has thrown the ball better than I think people have expected in the league. And with a guy like A.J. Brown, a guy like Devontae Smith, they have some talent on that team that, and Jordan Davis, like, I think one of the real benefits to him is that you are able to, defend the run with less commitment to the run, which you've studied and done a lot on. So liked the Eagles. Yeah,
the Eagles last year when I was doing like kind of the KPI work, they had like the least imaginative defense in the world, right? Least amount of stunts, ran like hardly any man coverage, didn't disguise their safeties at all. I just think that they had a significant and legitimate worry about the talent level on the defense and played a vanilla style, and that's why they lost every good team they played and they beat every bad team that they played, right? That's a well-coached team that got a lot out of that talent because there wasn't a ton of talent. They go Hassan Reddick, Jordan Davis, and then they go with A.J. Brown. I like the trade for the Titans though, because ultimately that team needs more talent and they need more young talent, and they play a quarterback who's on a veteran deal, right? And that limits what you can do.
It limits what they can do. They're in different situations. I agree with you. I actually like this trade for Tennessee.
I don't like Traylon Burks that much, but it's whatever. Right. I mean,
you have to kind of wipe the player out from a process
Robert Woods
standpoint.
is a wonderful player. Henry, I think we'll see how he does.
Okay, give me another one.
I like the Green Bay Packers draft after, and I'm going to specify it by after round 2. Like, okay. Quay Walker's fine. I mean, actually, Quay Walker's not a great pick. We won a lot of money off it. I don't think it was a great pick. And Christian Watson was a trade up. I thought Kwesi Adofo-Mensah did great there. After that, if you look at Benjamin Robinson's, model, they got one of the top, after, adjusting for everything. Romeo Dubes out of Nevada is a wonderful wide receiver prospect. And I think they should be lauded for taking him. So I like Green Bay's draft.
Okay. I referenced this earlier. I love the Steelers draft. Really liked the Steelers draft. And this is agnostic to how I feel about the quarterback. I would not have taken Kenny Pickett as the first quarterback. But they resisted the temptation to trade up for him. And they took a quarterback when they needed to take a quarterback. Okay. Now, would I have taken Malik Willis or Sam Howell? Sure. Yep. But I'm going to ignore that I know that much more than the league, and those guys all fell. And that's important. And then what they did from that point on, I thought was really great, right? So they went and they got a lot of values. DeMarvin Leal, I think, is a guy that,
Somebody messaged me in the league and was like, how did DeMarvin Leal fall this far? And I sort of, it's a good question.
He's an athletic freak. I vividly remember, maybe it was actually last year, right after the draft, when Renner posted his favorite prospects for the upcoming year. And this was a guy that, was right up there with Thibodeau in terms of how athletic and how good he was as a edge rusher. But the Pickens pick at 52, Leal at 84. Obviously, we talked about Pickett at 20. And then they continued to make some picks that I thought were cool. They took Calvin Austin, who's going to, I think, actually be pretty good in that offense if either of the quarterbacks can throw the football at all. Calvin Austin III out of Memphis, who, I mean, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's a playmaker, and you're not going to ask him to be an X in that. So I really liked what the Steelers did. You're welcome, Pittsburgh.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was going to come up. I like what the Chiefs did.
Oh.
I mean,
I've been waiting for you to talk about the Chiefs. Did you like it from a process perspective? Because they traded up.
So, okay.
For McDuffie.
So here's what I'll say. Relative to my expectations of what they were going to do, I was happy. I was very happy because, and we'll talk about this for a sec. So, like in Minnesota, right? Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, I thought, wheeled and dealt well. Like the trade back with Green Bay, they traded back in for but every single player they took was like 50 to 100 picks worse than the consensus big board. And I don't know if it's Ryan Grigson telling Kwesi. I mean, like he has a tough gig because he comes in January and all the scouts are from the previous. So you're making bets with other people's cards, right? That's a tough place to be in. So I'm going to give the guy a little bit of slack. But ultimately, like he did the analytics part and then forgot the other part, which is what the Ravens do, which is, let the board fall to you and then take the best players on the board,
right?
Because you don't know better than the market. You just don't, right? And that's like, that was, so to come back to Kansas City, Brett Veach has never traded down in his career, right? Until Saturday or Friday. And, his trade up for McDuffie, reportedly that was the last first round pick they had on their board. I mean, again, I like the pick. He his draft pick position.
Isn't that just like bad process though? To a certain extent?
I don't. Yes, you're right. But look, McDuffie was picked 16.5 in the betting market. You got him at 21. Karlaftis was picked 22.5. They get him at 30. And then James Cook was a great pick at safety. Sky Moore, and that was the trade back. So they traded back with New England. And Tyquan Thornton went to New England. They got Sky Moore, a 22nd best player. And so, like, look, everything's true. Like Brett Veach is a trade-up guy. He's an aggressive guy. He held his water for the vast majority of that draft. He traded up twice, and only really once did he give up a lot. And he had 12 picks.
Yeah.
So, relative to my expectations of what was going to happen, the Chiefs had a fantastic draft. Every single person, the Kennard guy was a 5th rounder we had in the 3rd round. He might start this year, a la Trey Smith. This was a draft where they needed to crush it out of the park. And I don't know if they were using our big board or whatever, but every single pick they had was one of our, like what we would have done at the time. And so as such, as a company man, but also a Chiefs fan, it made me very happy.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
I'm not really that happy for you.
I can't notice how
you don't deserve it. But
notice how I left it all the way to last.
You did.
I constrained myself.
If you were a Chiefs fan, you've got to be extremely happy, given that they traded up. In those situations, what they came out of there with, I think those are incredibly positive. And you look at a team. So I loved Detroit's draft. They sat there at number 2. They got the number 1 player on our board, Nate Hutchinson. They, at pick 12, took the best receiver in the draft in Jameson Williams. Now, sitting at 30, was it 34, that pick that they traded? 32?
32.
Yeah. So if they sat at 32, there were receivers that would still have been there. George Pickens, Sky Moore, they could have grabbed one of those guys. So I'm a little on the fence with them, but they then went and got Pascal, a pass rusher out of Kentucky. A lot of good things for the Lions. I'll give you though, they're not my team here. The team that I really liked what the Tennessee Titans did. Mm-hmm. Getting the value there at 18 with Treylon Burks, then Roger McCreary, who was incredibly productive at Auburn. They took a tackle who I wasn't a huge fan of at 69, but the Malik Willis pick at 86. We talked about this with the Commanders as well. If that pick if he's an above average quarterback, then this was an incredible draft for you. So really liked what the Titans did.
Yeah, and the thing with the Titans is, ultimately it's all about expectations, right? Like they're still the underdog to win the AFC South. The last year they were the 1 seed in the whole conference.
Yep.
But they're sort of much like with Kansas City. There needed to be some sort of competitive rebuilding of the roster, and they accomplished that a little bit. This brings me to bets because you talk about Detroit.
Yeah, you don't want to tell me what your least favorite draft was?
Oh, my least favorite draft. New England has to be it, right? And I know like that
it's too easy.
Cole Strange is going to be Logan Mankins, I guess.
It's honestly too easy. Yeah. It's too easy for it to be the Patriots.
But they haven't drafted well in forever. So this whole idea of like, you need to trust Belichick. Like Belichick
why?
Hasn't drafted well in years.
That poor Tyquan Thornton.
Yeah. I mean, Mac Jones is a great pick, but other than that, what have they really done lately?
Yeah. You're asking me. I mean, the only other one that I was going to throw out there was the Cardinals. What a nightmare that is.
Dude. Trading
pick number 23 for Hollywood Brown, who had more drops than touchdowns last year. And I actually like Hollywood Brown, but like, what are you doing there? That made zero sense to me. And I'm assuming they did that because Kyler Murray told them he wanted them, which is an even bigger disaster.
Well, especially if they're not going to actually be able to get Murray to sign a reasonable deal with them, right? Like that's a big.
I mean, I would have made him sign before I would have pulled that trigger. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know that I can throw the Jets in there, but you did what you should have done with those first 2 picks, and then I think everything else was kind of.
And I need to do that. I mean, we are. I want Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to do well. I think he's smart. I think the
trade back was
there's a great deal of I think a lot of, but you just look at your first 4 picks, right? You trade out, you get a safety. Okay, that's cool. But you had a safety that was actually fairly useful for you last year in Cam Bynum next to Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith, you've pushed his contract back in large part because you decided to sign the quarterback. Mm-hmm. So Harrison Smith is on this team into year like 34, 35 for you. So Cine and him are next to each other. Like you've drafted a ton of help at the safety position for a year. Not a ton, but some. And you're going to forego that for this first pick. The second pick is Andrew Booth, who they traded up for. A guy who said, quote, I was never healthy in college. Back issues, all that kind of stuff. Great, like had decent tape, but like ultimately you're trading up for a guy who's an injury risk.
Yeah.
Second round, their second round pick was Ed Ingram, a guard who missed an entire season at LSU because he was credibly accused of sexually assaulting a 17-year-old.
Not great, Bob.
59, like that. In addition to drafting a guard at 59, when your team still, let's be honest, sucks.
Yeah.
Like that's not great. And then 3rd round pick, Brian Asamoah, who's a good linebacker. Don't get me wrong, very athletic, is a good off-ball linebacker. You drafted, and now he didn't do this, but on your team you have Jordan Hicks, who you just signed to a free agency deal. You have Eric Kendricks, who is on a 5-year, $50 million deal. You just drafted Troy Dye. You just drafted Sage Surratt. And so, like, your team now has either a bunch of off-ball linebackers you're going to get rid of that you've spent capital on, or you're going to keep a ton of off-ball linebackers when you're drafting. And they drafted corners, we like that. But your drafting suggests that you need defensive backs.
Agree.
I like the wheeling dealing. I don't get any of the picks. I don't get any of the picks.
All right, bets. It's time to make some bets here, baby. It's May, so the season is fast approaching. We're going to talk through bets that we'd make and then close out with offensive and defensive rookie of the year bets. So give me the first one that you want to place based on what we saw happen this weekend.
These two are correlated with each other. Mm-hmm. Okay. Detroit 12-1 to win the NFC North. And Minnesota Vikings under 9 wins. If the Vikings' true number should be 8.5. If you give me 9, I will take it every single day. But here's the thing with Detroit.
Would you rather bet Detroit over win total? Because win the NFC, yeah.
But like 12-1 is giving me remarkable payoff when all that really needs to happen is, like, well, not all, but like Aaron Rodgers just needs to either regress or get hurt, and this is a really good bet.
Yeah.
And we don't want that to happen, but I'm just saying, like, these things do happen, and we shouldn't.
He has gotten hurt multiple times.
We shouldn't underestimate their likelihood. Look, think about Detroit's offense for a sec. Okay, you have DJ Chark, you have Aramon St. Brown, you have Jamison Williams, you have tight end TJ Hawkinson, running back DeAndre Swift, whatever, but he's still a good player. Offensive line, you have Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow. It's a pretty freaking good offense, and Jared Goff, who isn't great but is fine, right? On defense, you have Amani Oruwariye, who had 6 interceptions last year. You have Jeff Okudah, who was starting to turn the corner a little bit before he got hurt, could come back and be fine. Mm-hmm. You have Aiden Hutchinson rushing the passer, and Aleem McNeil on the interior. That is not a bad football team. That football team is that football team is being lined to have 3 fewer wins than the Vikings, and I think the Vikings will be lucky to split with them this year. So those are the 2 bets that I like the most out of this week.
I love both of those. I'm all on board with both of them. Here's one that I love coming out of this week. Baltimore Ravens plus 225 to win the AFC North.
It's still.
They got better as a team. There's just no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. And that's even they took Ajabo, who's not going to play this year, but they really found a way with what they did to bring some impact players into their organization. Yeah. And you look at I thought the Bengals had a fine draft. I've talked about the Steelers there. The tough thing with the Steelers at 8-1, and I don't hate that bet either, is the tough thing is there's so much unknown with the quarterback.
Yeah.
And so
we can like what the Steelers did and still say they'll be pitiful this year, which I think they will be.
Yes and no, though. They're going to upgrade at quarterback, I think, regardless of who plays here. So, yeah, I actually, I'm now talking myself into Steelers 8-1, but that's another one that I like.
Las Vegas Raiders under 8.5 wins.
I knew this was coming.
This is just, and I know, okay, now you can say it. This is the first time we've been actually negative about the Raiders for a long time. We were positive on them last year. The Chiefs are going to be great again. I think, look, if your impression of the Chiefs was this team was buoyed by Patrick Mahomes and Brett Veach is an idiot, you have to take a little bit of a step back this offseason and say, I have to reevaluate that. Mm-hmm. And I've been critical. I've never thought Veach is an idiot, but I've been critical of him, the Frank Clark trade, the Breeland Speaks draft pick, a bunch of stuff. They very clearly have decided the course is for them to build like the Patriots, and the year one is, I think, phenomenal so far. The Chargers are going to be good. The Broncos are going to be good. The Raiders are going to suck. There you go. My under 8.5.
I like both of those. I like that you wrote this one down in our notes, and I think we should talk about it because it's Kansas City plus 550 to win the AFC. And I think this is the right take. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. They should be the favorite, I think.
So the only issue is the Chiefs have the hardest schedule in the NFL. So and I think some of that is associated with maybe a little bit higher priors on the Raiders than we should have. I also think I don't know which of the Broncos and the Chargers are going to be the team that disappoints, but I think at least one of them will. I don't know which one, but statistically speaking, I'm going to be all over plus price things on the Chiefs this year. I'm actually not going to be over 10.5 on them. I do think that there's a chance that the acclimation is tougher, that, and we saw it a little bit this year. They lost 5 games. They lost to the Bengals. They lost to every good team they played last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not every good team, but they lost to the AFC North champion. They lost to the AFC South champion. They lost to the Chargers, and they lost to the Ravens, and they lost who's the AFC East champion. They lost to the Bills at home, and so they lost to every good team in the AFC last year. And so Can they not do that? The year before, they had 5 wins on the road against teams that won 10 games or more, right? So it's tricky. But for me, it's like if Patrick Mahomes and company get into the basin of teams, like if they're conditional on being good enough to get to the divisional round of the AFC playoffs, they're the best bet out there. It's just that I do think that there's going to be some acclimation to playing a lot of young players, no Tyreek Hill, all that stuff. So I'm not going to go like any bet that's like minus 110, like over 10.5 wins. But a bet like plus 550, okay, I'll do that because it's, it's giving me good payout for something that I think is pretty fat tail, which is their outcome this year.
Yeah, I have one more here. Philadelphia Eagles are plus 275 to win the NFC East.
Oh.
Feed me.
Yeah, it's a good meal there. Oh, show. The Eagles just, they're in a great spot to find out if Jalen Hurts is any good. And if Jalen Hurts is any good, great. If he's not, or if he's like Baker Mayfield, you move on. I think that they're very much, this is like the next wave. I think they're woke to this idea of like, look how ugly it can get if you're Cleveland, right? That divorce was not great with Mayfield, they're still married. But that divorce has not been great. You got to prepare for that, right? And you got to be honest with the quarterback that you're going into it with, right? I think the issue with the Browns is they didn't extend Baker, which I thought was sharp, but they probably also didn't tell him like, look, you still have to. I know you had a great game in the playoffs. I know you got us to 11 wins, but you still got to prove yourself, right? And tell him why. I think Jalen Hurts knows full well that he's a limited quarterback that's got to improve for him to be the franchise quarterback in Philadelphia. And kudos to the Eagles for putting players around him to give him the best chance to prove himself.
Agreed. Okay, you want to do some Rookie of the Year?
Okay.
Close this out? Okay, so let's start with let's do defense first. Defensive Rookie of the Year. These are on DraftKings Sportsbook. Aiden Hutchinson, 4-1. Kayvon Thibodeau, plus 450. Trayvon Walker, who we ironically did not talk about in this entire podcast, which I think tells everything you need to know, plus 550. Jermaine Johnson, plus 750. Devin Lloyd, also plus 750, along with Quay Walker. Stingley and Ahmad Gardner, 9-1. Kyle Hamilton, 10-1. Jordan Davis, 14-1. Trent McDuffie, Nakobe Dean, 16-1. Khair Elam, George Karlaftis, 18-1. Devontae Wyatt, Andrew Booth Jr., 20-1. Drake Jackson, 30-1. Daxon Hill, Roger McCreary, Lewis Cine, Kyler Gordon, all 30-1. Boye Mafe, Arnold Ebikite, 35-1. And this is where I will stop reading them off. What do you like?
You could not pay me to free roll Trayvon Walker at 11-2 or Jermaine Johnson at 15-2.
Nope.
Hutchinson's a good one. I think Detroit's going to be better than people believe, right? The Giants could be, but I think Detroit, Thibodeau and Hutchinson are rightfully the favorites in my opinion.
I agree. And it's hard for corners.
It's not. It is, and like you need a lot of interceptions. Here's the team that I think might be able to facilitate that. I'm going to go Khair Elam 18-1 for Buffalo.
I like it.
You got Von Miller there. You got a great defensive line. You got good linebackers, and you got a great defensive coordinator, Leslie Frazier. If he gets 5 interceptions, and that team's going to be ahead a lot too.
I can't believe that you didn't identify the 2 best bets on this board.
Okay.
They're both pass rushers, and they're both long odds, and they're both on teams that are going to be good with other pass rushers on that D line.
So you're talking about Drake Jackson,
30-1, George Karlaftis, 18-1. Those are absolute sense. You're welcome.
I think the issue with Karlaftis specifically is just like the Chiefs defense, the Spags defense just doesn't elicit big sack numbers for guys, but I can be convinced. I can buy into that hype.
Thank you. That's a good point. I just think, in a situation, you want to look for players that have longer odds that are going to be in the limelight and play on good teams.
Yeah.
And I think those are 2 of them. Okay. Offensive Rookie of the Year. The favorite, interestingly, I'm a little surprised by this, is Drake London, 11-2, plus 550. Kenny Pickett, 6-1. Treylon Burks, Breece Hall, 7-1. Garrett Wilson, plus 850. Kenneth Walker, 9-1. Jameson Williams, Christian Watson, Chris Olave, 10-1. Sky Moore, 12-1. Malik Willis, 14-1. Matt Corral, James Cook, Desmond Ritter, 15-1. Jahan Dotson, 18-1. Sam Howell, 20-1. Isaiah Spiller, George Pickens, 25-1. And that is where I will stop reading them. What do you like here?
Oh, this one's easy. James Cook, 15-1.
I'm with you. That one is too easy. I am 100%.
Like, this is going to be one of those where Buffalo is like, oh, they're returning to the roots. It's the best running back in Buffalo since Thurman Thomas.
He also can catch out of the backfield.
Yeah, he's also he's got to earn the starting job there. That's tricky, but you're getting better odds with him than like Sky Moore, who I like. You know, a lot of these wide receivers, but like running backs win this award a lot.
Yep. And there'll be a team that is in the limelight. He will have an opportunity to not be focused on by any defense. He could put up big numbers, and there's no running back there that like matters. So, yeah, the other one that I will throw out here that I think is just at least worth a consideration is Malik Willis is 14-1. Mm-hmm. Now, that team is not particularly good. Ryan Tannehill didn't look great at the end of last year. Mm-hmm. They've clearly already pivoted to the future.
Yes.
There is a chance that it does not look good for Ryan Tannehill in the first few games. Malik Willis comes in a weak division, and just because of his athleticism is a huge boost there. Treylon Burks starts to figure it out a little bit. That's the other one that I would bet.
Okay. I like that.
Wait, let me throw one more. George Pickens, 25-1.
Okay. That one's going to require the Steelers to be good. Yes.
But you never know.
But you do never know.
Could happen. How are your bets doing?
Look, this Michigan-Pittsburgh game.
I can tell your
my nervous ticks have emerged.
They have.
This game, so I have under 39.5. It was 16-0 after the first quarter. There has not been another point scored in this game. So the under is looking okay. I'm actually currently looking at, like, imagine the kind of degenerate you have to be to bet live on this league.
I can imagine.
But I've been looking at the live lines. I've not fired any live in a while.
May God be with you.
May God be, yeah. Look.
And with your spirit.
And with your spirit.
Thank you.
Philadelphia -3 tonight, -2.5. I think is a good bet. But look, famous last words for me have been pretty bad lately.
Where there is a will, there is a way. Good luck to you, my man. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. We appreciate all of you for joining us on a Sunday. We'll be back with you as we are normally on Wednesday evenings. Wednesdays and Sundays we'll be with you throughout the offseason as we get ready for the regular season. We want to know how we can make this regular season podcast even better. So there's a link in the description, a little survey. It takes you like 5 minutes, if that. We'd love to hear from you guys, especially if you're a new listener. What is it that you're looking for in a podcast? Something like, around betting. Obviously, we're not going to talk about like pop culture. TMZ is probably not where Eric and I are best suited, but let us know what you want to see from us in that survey, and we'll do our best to make it happen this coming year. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. We love you. Peace.